think? What questions will John Durham address that the IG didn't?
Well, Durham is looking at the whole waterfront. He is looking at the issue of how it got started. He's looking at whether or not the narrative of Trump being involved in the Russian interference actually preceded July and was in fact the precipitating trigger for the investigation. He's also looking at the conduct of the investigation. There are some things that were done in the investigation that are not included in Horowitz's report, and he's looking at those things. But also, a few weeks ago, I told him that he should spend just as much attention on the post-election period. And I did that because of some of the stuff that Horowitz has uncovered, which to me is inexplicable. Inexplicable. Well, what I said is their case collapsed after the election, and they never told the court, and they kept on getting renewals on these applications. There was documents falsified in order to get these renewals. There was all kinds of withholding of information from the court. And the question really is, what was the agenda after the election that kept them pressing ahead after their case collapsed? This is the President of the United States.
You, of course, went to 3 countries with him. Why did you have to do that? And some people have said, well, this is clearly Bill Barr's in charge of the investigation.
Well, the presentation of that in the media has been silly. The person running the investigation is John Durham. But this is a very unusual circumstance where we are going to foreign governments and asking them to assist and cooperate, including, some of their sensitive materials and personnel. And a U.S. attorney doesn't show up on the doorstep in some of these countries like London and say, hey, I want to talk to your intelligence people and so forth. All the regularities were followed. I went through my purpose was to introduce Durham to the appropriate people and set up a channel that he could work with these countries. At the request of the country, I went through the ambassadors of each country, and the governments wanted to initially talk to me to find out, what is this about? What are the ground rules? Is this going to be a criminal case? Are you going to, do a public report? They wanted to understand the ground rules before they met with Durham, and I met with him, and then I set up appropriate channels. This was perfectly appropriate.
Speaking of whether something is appropriate or not, was it appropriate for John Durham to issue his statement yesterday, given that he's a U.S. attorney with a grand jury and his investigation isn't done yet?
Yeah, I think it was definitely appropriate because I think it was necessary to avoid public confusion. I think it was sort of being reported by the press that the issue of predication was sort of done and over, even though it was a very limited look at that issue by the IG, given the narrowness of his, of the evidence available to him. And I think it was important for people to understand that Durham's work was not being preempted. And that Durham was doing something different, and he explains what he's doing different, and that there are areas of disagreement. I think it was perfectly appropriate so the public understood the relationship between the two exercises.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.